So, Jeff, tell me about your quiz results there.
So we just took an introvert extrovert quiz, an official quiz here, very very official. We looked it up on Google and picked one.
It took several seconds.
Yeah, it was a really long 10-question quiz, so it's very in depth. I got extrovert. Whew, big shock.
Wow.
What'd you get, Jamie?
You know what? I actually got ambivert.
Really?
So somewhere in the middle, but I definitely, if you look at my answers, I'm definitely leaning introvert, but a little more towards the middle.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, that's more extroverted than I expected from you, to be
Yeah,
fair.
a little bit. Yeah.
So, but hey.
Fiercely accurate, too, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Hey, that's what we're talking about today on Deepish Thoughts. So, yeah, welcome to Deepish Thoughts. All right, well, welcome to Deepish Thoughts. My name is Jeff.
And I'm Jamie, and we're talking about introversion and extroversion today. And we kind of have one of each here to talk about that. So,
yeah, that's exactly right. That's why I think we feel like, hey, this is a good topic to discuss, because a lot of times I feel like there's a tension sometimes. Like
Definitely.
Tension between like extroverts and introverts. There's a little bit of, is it fair to say tribalism? Is that fair, or is that too exaggerated?
I don't know. Sounds like something an extrovert would say about it.
Gosh.
So
Wow. Already throwing shots. You see this?
I mean, let's just start with the title of the episode, Jeff. Which is better, you or me?
I think most people would say that you're better just as a person.
Not you or me. Extroverts, introverts.
No,
which is better?
I think most of my life I've felt like extroverts were better.
Yeah.
To be honest. I mean, I think I felt that because maybe we should back up and talk about what we're even talking about. Because maybe there are some people who are listening who are like, I don't even know what extrovert or introvert mean.
Yeah.
So maybe we should back up before we get into the conflict here.
And that's a good idea, because sometimes even people familiar with the terms, there's different definitions used, right?
That's true.
So tell me how you have heard or how you think extroversion and introversion are actually defined.
Sure. So I typically think of extrovert. I think when I was growing up, I thought of extroverted as just being social. And I don't think that's actually accurate. I think it's more than that, because that's more of outgoing, not being extroverted or introverted.
Yeah.
I think the definition that I work with these days, and I think is a lot more accurate, is like how you get energy, basically. How are you energized?
Yeah.
And so I think extroverts, that means that they get energy from outside of themselves. So socially energized. So when I'm with people, or with somebody's with people and they get energized from that gives them energy, and they're like pumped up and excited, and maybe they feel alive that way.
Right.
Whereas introverts can be social, but maybe they like to withdraw, be reflective, be alone, and that's how they're going to recharge. Would you say that's a fair
I think
description?
so. I think like you, I probably had a misunderstanding of this growing up, where, an extrovert is somebody who's just, or maybe I'll say it the other way. An introvert is somebody who's just very antisocial.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily true. And I've come to learn that the real definition is what you just said. Where do you energize? Is it around people, or is it on your own? And that's kind of what defines it. So, I think that's the right way to define it, from what I understand.
Yeah, and we're not psychologists, guys. We're not experts in mental anything. We're a couple of dudes who work at a church, and that's what we think. So maybe somebody else has a more clinical, like official definition, and that's okay.
Yeah, but I think that's a good working definition for this conversation. And one thing I like about this conversation is it's going to be relatable to everybody, because everybody probably leans one way or the other. There's a few people that you might be like, I don't know, I'm kind of like right in the middle. But most of us, we lean one way or the other. All of us know people that definitely lean one way or the other, and so it's a super relevant conversation. Yeah. So that's one thing I like about this topic, which I'm pretty sure was your idea.
Was
Jeff,
it?
So I want to give you credit.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So well done. Yeah. So, okay. As an extrovert, I mean, are you glad you're an extrovert? Do you think, you said you've kind of historically thought that that's better, maybe.
Yeah.
So maybe it sounds like you're glad that you are.
Yeah, I think I'm glad that I am. And I think the reason is because, well, it's going to sound so stupid. I was going to be like, because I like being with people, and so I think that makes sense. No, which is ridiculous and like whatever. I think the reason is because I've always thought that being social in general was like a moral good. Is that fair? That's really abstract. I know I'm kind of going like, oh, high level, whatever. But I think I felt like being social and being in a group of people and like interacting with people is just like inherently like better than being by yourself. Like how somehow being by yourself is selfish or self-serving in a way that's whereas being like when you're in a group, you can like help each other understand things better and you can help like work on stuff together versus being in isolation. I think that's kind of how I've pictured it. And I think that's why I felt like, you know, in my life, I don't think that at this point in my life, but I think for most of my life, I was like, yeah, being more social and outgoing, that's better because we need to be, and it's a good skill. And I think a lot of people who are introverts in my life, I've noticed were like very, like not just wanted to be by themselves, but almost like weren't even capable of socializing well. And I think that's bad, but that's just me.
No, I agree with that. Yeah. You know, and that maybe this is where the tension comes in because community is really important, right? We've talked about that over and over again on the podcast. Community is so crucial. Connection with other people and healthy connection with other people is so important. But that doesn't mean that alone time is morally bad, right? Those are not mutually exclusive. And I guess that's where the balance comes in. But I think like you, I kind of grew up thinking that being outgoing and more connected with people and maybe being able to be the life of the party was sort of best, you know? Like that's what we should all aspire to. And it's like the healthy people that are that.
Yeah.
And anyone short of that, kind of unhealthy or, you know, need to work your way that direction. And I think I've come to learn that that's not really the case. And I know you're not saying that's the case. You're talking about kind of impressions we have about things, right? So I think I've learned to appreciate introverts and being a little more introverted myself. But it's taken time.
Yeah. Do you think that do you enjoy being an introvert? Or, well, you're kind of like ambivert, leaning introvert.
Yeah, that's right.
Do you enjoy that? Like, I mean, that's kind of it's such an odd question. Like, do you enjoy being the way that you are?
Yeah, well, I think it's a really relevant question, right? A lot of us maybe don't feel comfortable in our own skin.
Yeah.
And that's true for extroverts, introverts, anybody. I guess the way I would answer it is I have come to enjoy being the way that I am, but it's taken time. Yeah. I think there was a time when and maybe some introverts out there can relate to this, when I felt inferior, you know, like, oh, why do I want to, why can't I just jump in and carry a conversation with a stranger or mingle at a large gathering and just, you know, kind of be a social butterfly. And I can do that a little bit, but it's not my sweet spot. You know, I kind of have to contrive it. And after a while I'm going to be like, okay, I'm pretty done with this. And I guess I felt like I should be able to do that, or if I can't do that, then that's a problem. But I've come to just understand that no, I'm wired the way I'm wired, and it's okay.
Yeah, that's good. And I think what you said earlier, I think you're right. A lot of people don't feel comfortable in their own skin. They wonder if maybe the way they live life is wrong, or you know, I know I've felt that. Where I think I'm more. In the last couple of years, I've questioned that a little bit more in myself because I was thinking about this question of introvert and extrovert, and I've always been an extrovert. In fact, my family is always like, "Oh, Jeff, you know, like Jeff's always hanging out with lots of people and all this stuff." And then the last couple of years, I feel like I've withdrawn a little bit and gotten more reflective and like basically taken on some more of those traits. Like if you were to look at it like on a spectrum, right? Like instead of being like 98% extrovert, I feel like I've like gone down a little bit to more like 70% extrovert. And I think that for me, that's like kind of rocked me a little bit. I'm like, what's happening? Like, how am I, like, I'm changing. I don't know if this is okay. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Huh.
And so I think it can cause like a bit of a, maybe crisis isn't the right word, but like it can cause some questions within us. Like, who am I?
Yeah. And that's so interesting that you bring that up because I would say that I've changed too. In fact, maybe the reason that I took that quiz and it came up more in the middle shows that change, because I don't think that always would have been the case
Yeah.
for me. I don't know. In my case, I wouldn't say it rocked me so much as maybe this goes back to feeling like extroversion is superior, but I actually feel kind of good that I've moved in that direction.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, we do evolve. Yeah.
Yeah.
As we get older.
Well, what do you think are some of like the biggest benefits of being an introvert? Because I think the extrovert, I think the benefits of that, I think are pretty not well documented, but like well observed. Like I think we know like, okay, they're more social, they connect with people really well, they can work in groups. What do you think are like the biggest benefits? Because I'm sure there are people listening who are like, dude, I'm totally judging introverts, and like, what are you even doing? But
Yeah,
I don't think that's
feeling the judgment right now.
Right now. Wow. Thank you for your judgment. No, I'm just kidding. What do you think are some of the benefits that maybe extroverts miss out on because they're not introverted? You know what I mean? Because I think that there's good things about both, but what do you think extroverts miss out on that introverts are really good at?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, it's good to be comfortable in solitude, and it's good to be comfortable with your own thoughts. And I probably, you could speak to this better, but I would imagine as an extrovert, spending a lot of time with a lot of people, while there are benefits to that too, maybe it's harder for you to pause and just reflect on what's going on inside of you or where you're at, whereas introverts, that just comes a lot more naturally because we do withdraw and kind of think about those things more. And that could be healthy. So that's one thing.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's like a reflective element to that's important. Yeah. I 100% agree with you with that. I was talking to somebody like a month ago who it was really interesting, and this is a younger person, and they said that being like reflective and thinking about their own life was like they were like, I'm terrified of that. Like I'm terrified of being by myself with my own thoughts because they didn't know how to handle reflecting on their own life. Like it was like this vast unknown, and it's just like, I don't want to go there because what if it's like, I don't really know what this person was afraid of. Like maybe they're afraid that they won't be able to handle what they find, or they'll hate the way they've been living. I'm not really sure, but I think that's really interesting. I think a lot of young people, that's true. There's like a fear of reflection because what if like they don't know what to do with it?
Yeah.
They don't know how to analyze themselves. It's like makes them nervous,
Yeah, I think that's common. And do you think this is going on a bit of a tangent, but it seems like the digital age might almost make that even harder because it's easier to not be alone with your thoughts because you have your device and you can scroll and you're still not reflecting about things, right? So
we're always distracted. We're always
Yeah.
distracted by something. If we're like, even in a social situation now, right? You go into like a group of people and you don't know anyone. What's the first thing you do? You whip out your phone and you're like distracting yourself with that. Like, oh, I'm going to text somebody, or I'm going to browse Facebook or Instagram or whatever it is that you browse.
So let me ask, do you do that as an extrovert? Even like if you're walking into a situation and you don't know people, or you're on the elevator, or you're waiting for your coffee or whatever.
Sometimes.
Is that what you do? Okay.
Sometimes.
Even as an extrovert, you might do that.
I think it depends on my mood. I think most of the time, I think some of the time I'm going to do something like that. But like right now, I'm in a very like extroverted mood, especially. And maybe you notice I'm a little bit more like, all over the place right now. That's how I feel. And so I think like sometimes, and I'd say most of the time, I'm like, if I'm like, say, an elevator, like that's a great example because a lot of people feel anxiety going into an elevator because a bunch of people they don't know. I'm going to be tempted to like crack a joke and like lighten the mood. I want people laughing, you know, and I'm going to like hope that people are like, just even if I'm making a fool of myself, like I don't mind because people are having a good time and I want people to like enjoy their life. And we're pretty bad at that in the United States. I think we're kind of bad at enjoying our life in a meaningful way.
Yeah.
And I think being like withdrawn and like maybe like distracting ourselves with our phones and stuff like that is a way that we distract from that reality, maybe.
Yeah. That could be a whole other episode, huh?
Yeah,
are we bad at being happy in our culture?
I like that. Should we type that in?
Yeah, put that on the list.
Yeah, I'm going to put it on the list
right
right now.
Hey, while you're putting it there, let me ask you this. So
what was the question?
Going back to not liking to be alone with our thoughts. So as an extrovert, can you relate to that? Like do you naturally struggle with just, pausing for reflection, or have you had to grow in that area, or what's that been like for you?
I think I've had to grow in that area. In the last couple of years, I also think I've gotten a lot better at that. But I also think like at this point in my life, it's like I like relish that. Like it's like so exciting to think about my life and reflect on stuff. That's just, I don't know. For me, that's how my brain is these days. But I think that's because of how I was raised too. I've realized recently the reflection and stuff. I think you can be an introvert and suck at reflection.
Yeah, well, you're right. Yeah.
So I think reflection is kind of an outside skill that anybody can learn, but a lot of people don't know how. And so I think personally, I think my family, I've realized in the last couple of months that that my family did a lot of the teaching of me to teaching me to be reflective. I just didn't realize that until recently. I thought it was something I came up with, and then somebody pointed out that I was an idiot if I thought that. And they were right. They were right. Actually, it was your wife who said that. It was like, no, I think your family helped you with that. And I was like, I think you're right.
Yeah, a shout out to your dad. He helped me understand the value of personal reflection. So yeah, that definitely is a value from your upbringing. So we've already alluded to this a little bit, but I'll take us back there because we can go a little deeper.
Okay.
Misunderstandings about both sides of the spectrum, the way people think about extroverts or introverts that maybe are not accurate. What are some of those common misunderstandings?
Well, I think I just mentioned one. I think people often think of introverts as reflective when I don't think they always are. I think a lot of times actually introverts are just like they just need to recharge, and maybe they're even insecure socially. And maybe that's part of it. And so I think like introverts aren't always reflective, aren't always good at that. And I also think that introverts aren't always bad at being social either. But I think there's a perception of introverts as like, oh, they don't know how to socialize.
Right.
And so I think there's that connection. I think that's a misperception. Would
you
agree?
I agree. Yeah. That being introverted is being antisocial. Because I'm an introvert and I'm very social and I enjoy people. I'm not shy. I'm not intimidated.
Right.
By being with people. It's just back to the energy thing. Sometimes I need to recharge from that. But yeah, I think that, and that's perceptive on your part as an extrovert to understand that too. So yeah, because that is a common one. Yeah. Well, back to what you said about, maybe nobody's really naturally good at reflection, or maybe a lot of people on both ends of the spectrum struggle with reflection. I guess you could just hole up in your room and do video games or scroll social media, and that would be being an introvert, but it's not being good at reflection either. So you're right. That's probably a learned skill for all of us.
Yeah, and maybe at some point we need to talk about how we do that. Maybe that should be a whole episode too.
Reflection.
Yeah, how do we stop and reflect? Or do we do that? Well, I think we kind of are saying that we don't really necessarily know how.
We tend not to, right?
Tend not to. I think in our culture we tend not to.
Yeah.
But, well, those are some misperceptions about introverts. I don't know. Are there any other misperceptions you'd say about introverts? Or?
No, that was the big one I thought of. Is that I guess another, I'll mention one more. The introverts are always just like quiet. Don't like to talk, don't like to express themselves. And sometimes introverts really do. Sometimes when you're around an introvert, you would never know that person's an introvert.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I think like my wife is a good example of that. Like she's pretty introverted, actually.
Yeah.
In my opinion. I think she'd argue with me on that. But I think she's introverted. But like people meet her and they're like, wow, she's so bubbly and fun and like energetic and then like, but I know how she is really, where she like goes and does something like that and she's like the life of the party and like the center of attention, and then she comes home and she's just like crashes and she's just like, I gotta be alone for a while. And I think that's like, it's totally an expectation thing. People have this like stereotype of what introverted people are like, and it's not always accurate.
Yeah, as a pastor, a big part of my job is to interact with people, right? That's a pretty big deal, and I enjoy it, and I am able to do it well. I think a lot of people, when I tell them, I'm an introvert, they're surprised because of that kind of misconception. It's
Yeah.
really funny. Okay, you're an extrovert married to an introvert.
Right.
At least that's what you're saying.
That's what I think. She'd
Well,
fight me, but
okay. I'm an introvert married to an extrovert. We'll dig into that a little deeper soon. But what I wanted to bring up now is that so my wife and I are both on staff at the church.
Right.
So we'll show up Sunday mornings. We're both in ministry mode, and we're hanging out with people and being social and connecting and all that. And then we'll be driving home from church, and Hannah is just, she's on fire. She's just excited. It's been a great morning, and I've had a great morning too, but I'm just like, I can't even communicate anymore. I'm just kind of like at the steering wheel, like just trying to get home and then collapse and recover. So we both really enjoyed our morning, but it just affects us different ways because of that. Maybe that's relatable to some of you out there.
Yeah. Or this is a classic thing, like when somebody's extroverted and they like call somebody on the way home from like an event. Have you ever had that? Like, I feel like that's an extroverted thing to do.
Oh, Hannah always does that.
Yeah.
She's always calling somebody on the drive home from wherever.
Yeah. Because you got all this extroverted energy. You got to like, I don't know.
Yeah.
You're like ready to talk to somebody about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know. I do that sometimes where I feel that where I'm like, something good just happened. I'm like, I got to like call, Allison or my parents or, a friend. I'm just like, dude, let me tell you about, what just happened. And, I just want to chat.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Okay.
I want to go back though. I don't want to miss out on like misperceptions of, because we talked about misperceptions of introverts, especially. Yeah. What about of extroverts? What do you think?
Well, you would maybe be able to speak to that a little better, but I'll just tell you some of my perceptions of extroverts, and then you tell me. Maybe this is one that's a little inaccurate. Introverts tend to think extroverts are just super secure and confident people.
My gosh.
And that's probably not the case.
Yeah, I don't think it has anything to do with that.
Yeah.
I think anybody can put on a confident face, though.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think there's a lot. In fact, I think there's so many extroverts that hide behind their extrovertedness because they're really insecure.
Yeah, interesting.
Where they're just like, I guess the way it'd play out is like, say I'm really insecure, and so what I need to be around people, and I need to be in a social situation to feel good about myself. And that's how I'm going to feel secure. You know what I mean? And so like that extroversion is a big like identity piece, I think, for some people where they need that and they need to feel like they're like, if they aren't around people, I think that's where there's an insecurity about reflection and being alone is that like, they're like, well, when I'm not with people, I don't know what to do. And so then they're insecure about it. So I think a lot of people are insecure extroverts, but it comes off as like really secure because they're in a secure environment.
Yeah.
Right. In that like, maybe they are more confident in that moment, but in their general life, maybe they're not that confident at all.
I see. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. So there's insecurity, but an extrovert would deal with it in a completely different way.
Right.
An introvert we'd lock ourselves away from people to escape our insecure feelings.
But then you'd feel more secure in that, where you're like,
correct.
You're by yourself and you're like, oh, okay, I'm good. I'm safe here.
Yeah.
Whereas other people are safe when other people are looking at them or giving them attention.
Ah, interesting. That's a helpful observation.
Opposite kind of experience.
Other misperceptions or misunderstandings that come to your mind, those are interesting.
I think, and this might, I don't know. I don't know if people would disagree with me on this one. You can let us know. But I think that, like, as an extrovert, I'm mostly extroverted. But I think sometimes I do want to do something by myself.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's a bad thing. But I'd say most of the time I want to be socializing in some way or talking to somebody. But I think that sometimes I do want to stop or maybe like I want to be in a group, but I don't want to be partying,
Yeah.
Like I want to be in a group just kind of just hanging out. You
Yeah.
know? I can because I think extroverted energy can be harnessed in a lot of different ways. And so I can be sitting in a hot tub with like a few friends and man, we don't even have to talk, but like the fact that they're there, I'm good with that.
Okay. Yeah.
And so I think sometimes it's just literally having somebody close. Remember when I was in college, me and my best friend historically has been introverted, Josue. And I remember in college, I think it was our third year of college, we were living at his parents' house in the basement. And I remember we would sit in the basement and we'd play video games together. And it was this weird, like, symbiotic relationship where, like, he was introverted, and so he was like, he didn't want to be with a bunch of unfamiliar people because that would drain him. But being with me, like, we were close enough that it wasn't a drain. In fact, he could still recharge around me.
Yeah.
But for me, as an extrovert, I didn't want to be alone. And so, like, having him close by, even if we're just playing video games and we're, like, at the same desk or table, like, that was enough to recharge me. And so it was weird because we were both recharging at the same time together. And I thought that was, like, weird.
Yeah, interesting. And you pointed out something there that I think is good to make sure extroverts understand, and that is that introverts can be very, it's not like, maybe when you hear, oh, people drain you, it's like, oh, just people just exhaust me. And I social time can be very energizing too, and in a different way, right?
Right.
Maybe we're physically tired after being around people, but emotionally, spiritually, we're uplifted and things like that.
Right.
So, yeah, that's important to understand too.
So maybe it's more complex than just like either I'm drained or I'm not. Maybe there's more elements to it. Maybe I'm drained in certain ways with certain people, and I'm energized by certain people in certain ways. Yeah. So maybe there's more maybe it's like, instead of this like one wide channel of like how it works, either I'm releasing or I'm gaining energy. Maybe it's like, maybe it's a lot more intricate than that.
Yeah.
Would that be a fair way to say what you're saying?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. All of a sudden we're into like territory that's way above our pay grade to even talk about here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's good. And so, but I think, I don't know, now because I haven't thought about it at this level before. And so now I'm like, I'm going to have to go think about that. Like, what are some facets of gaining energy or losing energy as a person? And like maybe there's like, more categories, and we need to figure that out. But we're not going to figure that out today. Just already telling you that we're not going to figure that out today.
But it's more nuanced than maybe we realize. Yeah.
I think it probably is. But anyways, we're going to keep talking about this idea of introvert and extrovert, but I know that we're coming to the end of our time. So here's what we're going to do. Is this now a good time?
Let's
I think now's about a good time. We're going to go ahead and pause. So what we're going to do is next week, actually, we're going to release part 2 of this conversation. So if that bothers you, I'm very sorry. I guess you'll just have to wait, and you'll have to see what we talk about.
See you next time.
So we'll see you guys next week on Deeper's Thoughts. I think that was close to. I was like 27 minutes. Is there a phone over here? Not mine.
No.
Just heard a. I don't think it's mine anyway. I'm gonna stop this for now because that'll make it.